Chapter 66. Our pact was signed. The tension had finally dissolved, and with it, the formal negotiations were complete. Yet one delicate matter remained, something far more personal, and thus far more perilous to navigate. The relationship between Momiji and Hakuro. And, of course, the quiet storm that was the potential marriage between Benimaru and Momiji. We'd made no progress on that front last night. It had been left awkwardly floating in the air like a pending storm. As I debated how best to bring it up, the Tengu aide stepped forward and produced a sealed envelope. "There is also the matter of this," he said, bowing respectfully. "Our elder, Lady Kaide, has sent this letter for you, Lady Rimuru." With practiced poise, Testarossa accepted the letter. Ren, ever efficient, handled opening and reading it aloud. The first paragraph was exactly what I expected: endless flowery pleasantries, the kind that danced around saying anything meaningful. Formalities, polite probes, subtle tests. It was practically an art form among nobility. But as Ren read on, her brow furrowed, the letter's tone shifting drastically. "I know things are complicated, and there have been a few misunderstandings, but I hope you will treat my daughter well. I remind you of what she told me about making Sir Benimaru turn toward her. I am sure she is not against the idea." "Wait, what?" I straightened slightly in my chair, lips parting in restrained surprise. "Are you quite certain this letter was addressed to me?" I asked, with all the dignity I could muster. Because it really didn't sound like it was. By now, my inner court was doing their best to suppress their reactions. Ren's lips twitched. Testarossa looked way too amused for my comfort. If I had known it would contain that, I would have dismissed my staff and read it in private. But alas, it was far too late for that now. Mother." Momiji sprang to her feet in a panic, as she practically lunged for the letter in Ren's hands. Rude of her, certainly, but I graciously decided to pretend I hadn't seen it. Given the circumstances, I couldn't blame her. If I were in her place, I wouldn't know whether to faint or flee either. This wasn't just a case of royal embarrassment. This was public defenestration of dignity. So there were two letters. "Mother, why can't you be more careful?" Clutching the parchment like it was a cursed artifact, she slumped back into her seat with all the grace of a puppet whose strings had just been cut. The flush across her cheeks could have rivaled the autumn leaves outside. Aha, that explained it. Kaide must have included a private message for Hakuro in the letter intended for me. Which meant this one had been a mix-up, likely meant to be delivered discreetly, away from the prying eyes of an entire diplomatic entourage. The Tengu aides swarmed around Momiji, clearly alarmed. Their efforts to soothe her, however sincere, only seemed to compound her suffering. She pulled her sleeves over her face like she wanted to disappear. Times like these, I knew from experience, it was best to not intervene. Let the storm pass. Let the girl recover her pride in her own time. "Heh, that's just like her." Hakuro's voice came from behind me, low and amused. He stepped forward with all the calm of a man who'd seen far worse in his decades of service, reaching out to gently retrieve the now crumpled letter from Momiji's hand. "I see," Hakuro said, scanning the letter with a nostalgic gaze. "She has a great deal of strength but is still lacking in technique. As a fellow student of the sword, and as her father as well, I hope that the sword ogre will deign it worthy to offer her training and instruction. From your ever-loving Kaide." His grip on the letter tightened. Slightly reverently. "So she still likes me, he said with a quiet chuckle. "Heh, how lucky I am to live to see this day." There was no pride in his voice, only his smile, rare and sincere, that softened his normally stoic features. "Father." Momiji's voice was scarcely above a whisper. He turned to her, that same smile still lighting his face. My name is Hakuro," he said, bowing slightly. "And I am your father." There was a pause. Then, "Father." Momiji practically launched herself into his arms, tears spilling freely as she embraced him. Her slender frame shook with emotion as she buried her face into his shoulder, and for a long moment, Hakuro simply held her, a hand resting gently atop her head. The girl who had approached us with such caution, such pride and mistrust, now clung to him like a child finally allowed to cry. No longer wary of us. No longer doubting Hakuro's words. She had found her place. "I must warn you, Momiji," Hakuro said at last, drawing back slightly and placing his hands on her shoulders. "I am a hard taskmaster on the training grounds." "Yes," she sniffled, nodding vigorously despite the tears. "But I want to see you overcome your challenges," he added warmly, "and win the heart of Sir Benimaru." "Yes, father," she answered with unshakable determination, even as her face turned a violent shade of red. A soft ripple of laughter passed through the room. Testarossa smiled behind a hand. Even Shion chuckled despite herself. I leaned forward slightly, resting my cheek on one hand. Well now, I said with a gentle smile, I suppose that settles the matter of mentorship. Hakuro. Benimaru's voice trailed off, clearly trying to interject. But it was no use. Hakuro and Momiji were in their own little world, locked in a tearful embrace. Decades of separation had collapsed in an instant, and there was no room left for third-party commentary, least of all from the poor soul caught in a sudden love triangle. Oh, now I see, Shuna murmured. All eyes turned toward her. She didn't flinch, stepping forward with a soft rustle of robes. She looked directly at Benimaru, her voice composed. My brother, I have a message for you. From Lady Alvis. Benimaru froze. What is it? He asked, though his eyes clearly begged, please not now. Please, not here. Shuna paid him no mind. Her voice took on a subtle lilt, mimicking Alvis's airy accent with eerie precision. Sir Benimaru, I have made up my mind. I intend to defeat Lady Momiji in battle and claim the right to be your wife for myself, but even in the worst-case scenario, I could always be a concubine, couldn't I? Either way, I refuse to give up, so prepare yourself. The room fell into stunned silence. Then, chaos. My staff immediately began whispering among themselves, their curiosity blazing to life like someone had just lit a bonfire in the middle of a library. Wait, did she just say concubine? Is this a duel for love? She's totally serious, isn't she? I heard a quiet scoff from the back. Ren, standing primly with her arms crossed, muttered under her breath, a battle for love and honor. Classic rival route unlocked. Next episode. Benimaru's brides, clash at Crimson Peak. I turned my head slightly. Ren, I said, softly but firmly. She straightened. Apologies, my lady. I'll refrain. Good. Still, even I couldn't help but smile a little. Benimaru looked as though the world had collapsed around him. He stood there, mouth open, staring helplessly as Hakuro and Momiji sparkled with familial reunion energy on one side, while the threat of Alvis's passionate war declaration loomed over the other. My life is over, he muttered. I thought you liked being popular with women, I teased gently. Not this kind of popular. He groaned. Ah, the burdens of popularity, I mused with a soft smile, my tone tinged with wry amusement. Lady Rimuru, Gobta said with a hint of exasperation, are you really saying that? Because I think you've got the exact same problem. He glanced nervously at Testarossa and Shuna. The two women were glaring silently at him, each with a different flavor of displeasure. Gobta quickly averted his gaze, a bead of sweat forming on his forehead. Right, just making an observation. I'll be quiet now. Then, as expected, Diablo stepped forward with a hand on his chest and a reverent glow in his eyes. Romance holds no meaning for me. Lady Rimuru is the axis upon which my entire world turns. My devotion transcends such foolish notions. I didn't ask you, Diablo. If you have no interest, then leave me alone, okay? But even as I entertained the thought of peace and silence, my subordinates were already lost in their own lively chatter. Sir Benimaru has quite the following these days, doesn't he? Gabble remarked, tone casual but eyes glinting with curiosity. I've heard whispers that some of the warriors under my sister Soka's command have taken a liking to him as well. Still, compared to Lady Alvis and Lady Momiji, I fear their chances are less than stellar. You mean Toka and Seika? Gobta chimed in. Exactly. Though I believe they've all but abandoned hope where Sir Soe is concerned, Gabble continued. Soka's made her claim rather obvious. Oh, don't be ridiculous, Soe said with a sigh, but there was no force behind the protest. No, it's true, Gobta insisted. It's practically a harem. I'm so jealous. A harem, Gabble mused aloud, stroking his chin with mock gravity. Truly, any man would envy such a situation. Well, not so fast, Soe said, his voice cool and precise as always. Benimaru, for all his confidence, is surprisingly awkward in these matters. He may act the part of a capable commander, but when it comes to romance, I assure you, he is just as lost as the rest of us. Before long, the discussion took an unexpected turn toward the finer points of winning a woman's heart. There was a small pause, then Soe added thoughtfully, women can be more easily drawn to a man than one might expect. They can, came the immediate, incredulous reply. Quite so, Soe continued, with a tone halfway between chiding and bemused. For example, there was a female knight some time ago. I'm not certain what gave her the idea, but she appeared to harbor rather pointed affections for me. Wait, seriously, what did you do? Gobta gasped. Oh ho. Gabble leaned forward eagerly. This is news to me. I watched from my seat with a quiet, amused smile, sipping my tea as if none of this involved me. Honestly, it seems I'm not the only one beset by troublesome affections these days. Ah yes, that. You see, I took some sticky steel thread and... Soe stopped mid-sentence. A cold chill swept the room. A single sound sliced through the chatter like a divine punishment descending from the heavens. Ahem. Everyone went silent. Ren stood a short distance behind us, hands folded politely in front of her, face expressionless. The kind of stillness that meant trouble. She took a slow step forward, her presence like a silent alarm bell, and Soe wisely took a step back. I instinctively straightened my posture. Ren then leaned in toward me, just enough so that only I could hear. If you're curious, Lady Rimuru, she whispered, her tone soft and eerily calm, Soe is quite the expert with threads. That naturally lends itself well to certain themes. I blinked. Themes. She didn't flinch. Bondage. Light masochistic play. That sort of thing. I stared at her, mortified. Ren, but she just kept going, unmoved. And if you enjoy that sort of thing, she added with an utterly deadpan expression, I'm fairly certain Lady Seal wouldn't mind. If it's you, she'd probably welcome it. I felt my soul try to leave my body. Through our bond, CL's voice cracked like glass. Less than M master. Please, don't listen to her. Greater than, Ren, I whispered sharply, red-faced. What part of maid includes this kind of commentary? She gave a small, thoughtful nod. I serve in all areas, my lady. Even education. From across the room, Diablo raised a hand with a smile. If Lady Rimuru ever wishes to explore the art of tasteful restraint, I would gladly offer myself as a willing subject for your exclusive use, of course. My body, my pride, my everything, is already yours. No thank you, I yelled. Anyway, well, not that thinking about this issue would get us any closer to solving it. What do you think about this, Benimaru? He crossed his arms, his brow furrowed. Personally speaking, I do feel this is all going too fast. However, one thing I can say for sure is that one spouse is all I'd like to have. Yeah, fair enough. Being asked out of nowhere to marry would knock anyone for a loop. I know it'd throw me off. The past is one thing, but we live in an era where you're free to love whoever you want and to not love someone, if that's your choice. Momiji watched Benimaru starry-eyed as she spoke. So no harem, then. I was hoping that was the end of the topic, but it was really just the beginning. All right, in that case, I accept Alvis's challenge. I promise you, I will earn the role of Benimaru's wife with my own 2 hands. Momiji all but shouted this declaration out to the world. I wasn't sure this is how love worked, exactly, but Benimaru seemed to have given up and didn't comment on it. What do you think of that, Lady Rimuru? Shuna asked, her voice sweet and composed, but her eyes shimmered with quiet determination. What do I think of it? I paused, resting one hand lightly on my lap while the other lifted my teacup. I took a refined sip, allowing the warmth to settle before I answered, well, there's no problem with it, is there? I don't want any to the death duels or anything overly theatrical. But if it's more like vying to woo him, then I see no harm. If he's not interested, it ends there. I set the cup down with a soft clink, posture impeccable. So long as it doesn't slip into stalker territory, I have no objection. Very well, Shuna replied, a delicate smile curling on her lips. I had a bad feeling about that the moment she said it. Then came the subtle click of heels on polished stone. Testarossa stepped forward, elegant as ever, a gloved hand brushing a strand of silver hair behind her ear. She said nothing at first, just positioned herself slightly across from Shuna. For a moment, their eyes met. No words were exchanged. Then, almost in sync, they turned to look at me. Not directly, not obviously, but expectantly. I didn't move. I simply smiled with queenly poise, letting the silence speak for me. The tension lingered for a few seconds longer, and then, flag raised, came Ren's whisper from beside me, flat and quiet like a commentary track. 2 heroines, opposing archetypes, the cool beauty and the gentle lady. Classic. I blinked. Ren, completely expressionless, nodded solemnly. Otome game energy detected. Before I could respond, CL's voice echoed smoothly in my mind, a hint of amusement threading her usual composed tone. Do not worry, master. I will protect you. What, even if they form a faction, or a harem? I alone will stand between them and your virtue. Your honor shall remain unblemished. Seal, that's not necessary. I have already calculated the probability of sudden seduction attempts and implemented mental safeguards. Why do you sound proud of that? Because I am. Outside, I maintained my graceful posture, legs crossed, back straight, expression serene as ever. But inwardly, I was holding back the overwhelming urge to sink into the floor. And across from me, both Shuna and Testarossa tilted their heads slightly, smiling just a bit too sweetly. I had a very bad feeling about this. It was evening by the time we wrapped up our final talks with the Tengu. After a slightly early dinner, I decided it was the perfect time to hold our first proper administrative meeting in quite a while. With all of my top officials finally gathered in one place, it felt like the right moment to share updates and align on recent developments. We also had a few guests, Veldora, of course, along with Ramirez and her attendants, Beretta and Trainee. Milam had promised to return in 3 days for the festival. Apparently, Fry's patience was wearing dangerously thin. Milam, wise for once, had decided to head home before the storm broke. Smart girl. I didn't know exactly how furious Frey was, but if Milam lingered any longer, the answer was likely, extremely. And I had no desire to be collateral damage in that particular showdown. I gave a small nod and addressed the room. All right, Molly, could you give us an overview of our current status? Yes, my lady, if you'll excuse me, he replied smoothly, rising from his seat beside Rigard. With his usual calm confidence, Mjalmile began outlining our preparations for the Founders' Festival in detail. His voice carried a professional energy that filled the hall, every word measured and well practiced. I folded my hands in my lap, sitting upright with quiet poise as I listened. I didn't need to say anything yet, but I was already formulating thoughts, revisions, and praise where due. 2 days from now, on the eve of the opening ceremonies, we would be hosting a citywide launch party. The entire town was invited, not just honored guests, but the merchants, the adventurers escorting them, and even travelers arriving from nearby regions. Food and drink would be free for all. The announcement had already spread far and wide, and I'd heard that even local farmers from surrounding cities were making the trip just for the occasion. Exactly the kind of tourism I was hoping to encourage. So naturally, I intended to make absolutely certain they had an unforgettable time. Meanwhile, within the reception hall, we would be holding a more exclusive, palatial banquet for the visiting royals and nobles. The menu would be a joint masterpiece by Shuna and Yoshida the baker. I knew they'd been experimenting with several new dishes for the occasion, and frankly, I was eager to taste every single one. Rather than a traditional seated arrangement, the banquet would be set up as a standing buffet. That way, our distinguished guests could sample small portions of a wide variety of delicacies at their leisure. It encouraged mingling, conversation and, of course, compliments for our chefs, which I was sure they'd earn in abundance. And so, the Founders' Festival would officially begin. On the morning of the first day, I was to deliver a speech. Yes, yet another speech. But given the occasion, it was unavoidable. After all, I still needed a formal event to publicly proclaim my status as a demon lord. I had, quite reasonably, suggested skipping it. Everyone already knew by now, didn't they? Ren simply smiled at me. A quiet, immovable smile. One that said, "No, my lady." And so, a speech it would be. Right afterward, the battle tournament at the Colosseum would commence. A highly anticipated event, drawing warriors and spectators from all across the region. But I, of course, would not be attending at least not for the preliminary rounds. This festival wasn't merely for entertainment. It was our grand diplomatic debut, designed to allow nobles, merchants, and leaders from other nations to experience the culture and charm of Tempest firsthand. That meant I couldn't afford to spend the whole day lounging in a spectator's box. Instead, my itinerary had me seated at our newly renovated and admittedly stunning theater. The structure had been transformed into a truly elegant venue, adorned with rich fabrics and polished stone, perfect for impressing foreign guests. No one had told me what kind of performance to expect, which made me a little uneasy. Still, Molly seemed positively thrilled about it. "I believe this will be the moment where you show the world what it means to be a cultured demon lord," he'd said with a gleam in his eyes. After lunch came the technological exhibition, an event I was quietly proud of. Panels included Gabble Investors' joint lecture on the history and evolution of healing potions, along with a grand weapons tour hosted by none other than Kurob and Garm. Between magical metallurgy, enchanted artifacts, and some rather over-engineered showpieces, I expected it to be quite the crowd pleaser. The venue was our newly completed museum. Like the theater, it would open to the general public starting on the second day. But for today, it was invitation only, reserved exclusively for visiting nobility, so they could explore the exhibits at a leisurely pace without the usual hustle and bustle. A practical decision for both crowd control and security. Some of these nobles were the twitchy type, after all. As for days 2 through 5, those were intentionally left unstructured free days, so to speak. No speeches, no formal gatherings, and definitely no politics. Just time for people to enjoy Tempest at their own pace. I wanted our visitors to explore the city, sample the cuisine, browse the markets, and experience firsthand the culture we'd built on their own terms. Frankly, I was looking forward to that part the most. Speaking of day 6, that would be the day I finally began attending the battle tournament in person. Later that afternoon, I'd also be holding a series of informal audiences, or, to put it more honestly, it was in scheduled free time dressed up as public relations. I'd remain in my VIP box at the arena, and anyone who wished to speak with me would be received one by one. Ren and Testa were in charge of arranging the schedule, so I had little to worry about. In truth, it would be a welcome change of pace, a chance to enjoy the matches while engaging in light diplomacy. Everyone who had received a formal invitation would have a dedicated guide at their side, allowing them to experience the festival freely. Whether they chose to stroll through the merchant stalls, soak in our luxurious hot springs, or catch a few battles of their own, I hoped they'd leave with fond memories of Tempest. Then, on day 7, we would finally unveil the crown jewel of our preparations, Tempest's long-awaited dungeon. The final matches of the tournament would conclude that morning, and by the afternoon, the true spectacle would begin, adventurers boldly challenging the depths of our labyrinth, eager to make a name for themselves. Kwa ha ha ha, and I have discovered the ultimate in gourmet bliss with my hibachi grill. It shall be a can't-miss delight, I assure you. Ah, yes, I nearly forgot Veldora had insisted on running a food stall. Naturally, we couldn't have him just loitering around, so we allowed him to participate in disguise. There was simply no arguing with him once he got excited. It was rather amusing, really. Somewhere along the line, Molly and Veldora had developed an unexpected camaraderie. Despite the endless list of absurd demands I had foisted upon them, Mjalmile now handled it all with practiced ease. Truly, an incredible man. That concluded Molly's detailed rundown. Diablo, Hakuro, and Geld, none of whom had been present during the lead-up, listened attentively, their expressions composed but tinged with a hint of regret. I could tell they wished they'd been more directly involved. I made a mental note to reward them accordingly. Gelds could wait until he finished his current assignment, but Diablo and Hakuro had already completed their tasks flawlessly. With that thought tucked away, I addressed the rest of my officials. So far, everything seems to be progressing smoothly, I said, my tone poised and calm. Has anyone encountered any issues or unexpected developments? I was about to pass the floor to Soe when, here, a clear voice rang out. What's up, Ramirez? Well, I got a problem. Yes, what is it? Okay, well, you see, it's about the bottom floors of the dungeon. She trailed off, glancing uneasily at Veldora. Kwa ha ha ha, yes, it is nothing serious, Veldora jumped in. You recall the forest we installed on floor 95 of the labyrinth? Well, for some reason, it has begun growing upward into the higher levels, and it now covers everything up to floor 71. Quote. That's going to be a pretty big pain to clean up, isn't it? It sure is. That's why I'm bringing it up with you. Ramirez cried, clearly exasperated. I sighed inwardly. As much as I didn't want to admit it, she had a point. And frankly, if anyone was to blame for this, it was Veldora. And Veldora added with a sheepish cough, we do have one more small issue. Quote. What would that be? I asked, despite knowing I'd probably regret it. Veldora's next words were, far beyond my expectations. My boss-level monsters are missing. That was what I wished to discuss. Ah, well, at least it wasn't something ridiculous this time. Apparently, the creeping forest had been absorbing the surrounding magicules at a rapid pace, faster than our spawning systems could compensate for. As a result, we weren't getting any monsters strong enough to qualify as proper bosses for the lower floors. The only one to emerge recently had been a Tempest Serpent, ranked A-. I'd already assigned it as the boss of floor 40. And, of course, it had been Veldora and Ramirez who insisted they didn't want any, Small fry, like that stinking up their domains. If they wanted to take it back now. Too late. That ship had sailed. Yes, I want you to employ monsters worthy of serving as my bosses. And clean up the forest for me. Quote. Quote. I stifled the urge to pinch the bridge of my nose. Truly, Veldora's timing was as magnificent as ever right when I could least afford distractions. Still, I was only planning to open the dungeon to floor 50 for this unveiling. We could handle the overgrowth later. As for Veldora's grand demand for boss-worthy monsters, he would simply have to take responsibility for the consequences of his rampant mana experiments. I had no intention of personally entertaining this particular tantrum. Just as I opened my mouth to turn him down, 3 voices rose in perfect synchrony. I think we have the perfect person for the job, actually. Lady Rimuru, why don't you let them take care of this? My master, I can think of someone suitable. It was Shuna, Trainee, and Ranga. Shuna suggested that Adalman would work well as a floor boss, and Gabble quickly backed her up. Adalman's forces are weak against sunlight, she explained, so they'd thrive in a dark, cave-like environment. I think the labyrinth would be perfect for them. Besides, Shuna added with a sigh, he can be a little intense. Constantly praising you as a goddess and calling me your shrine. Maiden. Yeah, in Adalman's eyes, I was apparently a divine being, and Shuna was my personal priestess. That was annoying, to say the least. Fine, we'll put Adalman on floor 60 as the boss, I decided. And Romulus, assign an elemental colossus to floor 70. Something strong enough to leave an impression. With that, we had bosses set for floors 60 and 70. Next up was Trainee, who stepped forward with a calm, thoughtful expression. I suggest assigning floors 71 through 80 to Zejin and Apito, she said. The vegetation there is still relatively sparse, so it should suit their strengths. Both of them can summon their subordinates, so reclaiming those floors shouldn't take long. She paused, then cast a meaningful glance toward Romulus. Also, I believe Zejin would make an excellent boss for floor 80, she added with a gentle smile. He's done a splendid job protecting the tree ant homeland. This would be a natural next step. I see, I murmured, already picturing it. That sounds like a splendid idea. Veldora boomed, clearly enthused. I would be delighted to train him myself to mold him into a warrior worthy of commanding floor 80. Okay, let's go with that, I agreed. Then Ranga spoke up next. Master, he said, his voice calm as ever as he emerged halfway from my shadow, the fox spirit I've been tending to has awakened. It claims to be skilled in clearing forests through any method you request. I believe it would be wise to accept its assistance. Perched between Ranga's ears was what looked like a small fox puppet's fur of pristine white gold, and 4 golden tails swaying gently behind it. So cute. Wanna give it a shot? I asked. Indeed, I do, master. The fox replied, its eyes gleaming with enthusiasm as it nodded fervently. Again so cute. Okay, so, then it hit me. There was something I had overlooked. This fox spirit nicknamed Ninehead when it was under Clayman's control still didn't have a proper name. Well, wait, I said. Before that, let me give you a name. I raised my hand gently toward her. From this day forward, your name is Kumara. The moment I spoke the name, light engulfed her, and a sudden surge of energy filled the air. Her 4 tails shimmered and then, one by one, 5 more unfurled behind her, bringing the total to 9. During her fight with Ranga, she only had 3, each with its own magical ability. And now, with 9, it wasn't just a powerful spirit anymore. I had effectively summoned 9 magical beasts at once. My deepest thanks, master. I shall do all I can, Kumara declared, practically trembling with joy. Unable to resist, I gently scooped her up into my arms and gave her a soft pat on the head. Seriously, way too cute. Thus, I decided to entrust floors 81 through 90 to the overjoyed, scampering Kumara. She dashed around in circles, tail swaying in delight, clearly thrilled with her new responsibility. It wasn't like this section of the labyrinth would be flooded with adventurers from day one, anyway. And judging by Kumara's current strength and future potential, I felt confident she could handle the role alone. With her 9 magical abilities and boundless energy, she'd make a fine boss all on her own. That decision neatly wrapped up both Romulus's and Veldora's assignments. With their major concerns addressed, I felt a bit of weight lifted from my shoulders. More than that, though, I was glad to see how excited the rest of my staff was about the dungeon. Everyone had thrown themselves into their roles with genuine enthusiasm. The labyrinth wasn't just some grand experiment or vanity project, it was something I'd poured my heart into. Its success meant a lot to me. And now, with everyone supporting it so wholeheartedly, I felt more determined than ever to ensure it launched smoothly. This was only the beginning, but it felt like a very good one. I listened to everyone's reports after that. Once all the floors were assigned, and everyone had their duties, I called the meeting to a close. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of planning and strategizing, it was just the three of us left in the quiet meeting room: Ren, Testa, and myself. Testa, ever graceful, prepared a pot of tea and poured a steaming cup for me with a soft smile. The delicate aroma filled the room as I took a sip, finally allowing my shoulders to relax for the first time that day. This is perfect, I murmured with a content sigh, the warmth spreading through me. At last, all the preparations are done. Now I can finally rest. A peaceful silence followed, for exactly 3 seconds. My lady, Ren said calmly, breaking it with all the tact of a dagger in silk, the preparations are not over yet. My golden eyes narrowed with suspicion. What do you mean? Ren placed a hand over her chest and bowed ever so slightly. You must now prepare for the true battlefield, the Founding Festival's grand celebration. A massive, intense party is about to begin. Royalty, foreign dignitaries, representatives from every major power, all of them will be present. Testa giggled behind her teacup. In other words, the real pressure begins now. I set my cup down slowly, bracing myself. So what kind of preparation are we talking about? Ren didn't miss a beat. Your party dress. And, of course, a final check-up on your manners. You've improved significantly, my lady, but refinement must be maintained. Especially with so many high-ranking nobles watching your every move. Training, I muttered, my expression already falling. More training. Yes, Ren replied, utterly merciless. Proper posture, elegant speech, graceful etiquette. All of which you will demonstrate flawlessly, naturally. Testa leaned in, smiling slyly. Oh, don't look so glum, Lady Rimuru. Think of it as a chance to charm the entire continent. I gave them both a dry smile. I sense a plot to wear me down before the party even begins. Not at all, Ren replied sweetly, though her eyes gleamed. We're simply ensuring that you outshine every monarch in attendance. I groaned internally. I should have known. Compared to this, the dungeon was the easy part. The very next morning, I found myself standing in front of a grand full-length mirror inside one of the dressing chambers deep within my estate. Surrounding me were rows upon rows of luxurious gowns, each more dazzling than the last. Ren stood to my left, arms crossed like a stern tailor, and Testa lounged to my right, sipping tea as if this were the highlight of her entire month. No, Ren said flatly, rejecting the third gown in a row. Too flashy. That one did have a certain boldness to it, Testa murmured, not helping at all. But perhaps not elegant enough for our queen. I didn't even say I was wearing that one yet. I protested, still halfway into the dress. Can I at least put it on before it gets vetoed? Permission denied, Ren said coolly. Eventually, after what felt like an hour of silks, satins, frills, and discarded veils, Ren's eyes lit up with rare approval. She pulled a gown from the rack and held it up with both hands. This, she said with finality. Testa raised an eyebrow, then let out a soft gasp. Oh, that is lovely. The dress was a masterpiece. A long, flowing creation of deep blue and soft white. The top was elegant and form-fitting, a crisp white fabric with a high neckline that shimmered faintly under the light. It flowed into sheer long sleeves, delicate and translucent, ending in lace cuffs that brushed the wrists. The skirt was a rich, flowing blue, full, and graceful, with detailed floral embroidery that wrapped around the hem and spiraled upward in delicate vines. When I moved, the light played on the threads, making the blossoms seem to sway with every step. I slipped it on under Ren's watchful eye. When I stepped in front of the mirror, I had to pause. It was graceful, refined, not overbearing, not loud but undeniably regal. A dress fit for someone who truly stood at the top. Testa clasped her hands together and beamed. Exquisite. That dress was made for you, Lady Rimuru. Ren gave a firm nod. Now that the dress is chosen, we can proceed to your posture, expression, and speech refinement. I turned to her slowly. We're not done, Testa chuckled. Oh, my dear, picking the dress is only the beginning. Of course it was. Why did I even ask? By the time I finally returned home, the sky had darkened into a soft, velvety blue. Stars twinkled above the city of Tempest, casting a calm, celestial light over the land. My footsteps echoed quietly through the corridor, but the moment I opened the door to our private residence. Mummy. Shinsha came flying at me like a bolt of silver blue lightning, her tiny arms wrapping around my waist with all the force her small body could muster. Right behind her, Shizu ran up as well, golden eyes glowing with warmth. Welcome back, Mama, I smiled, a wave of exhaustion melting into joy as I knelt down and hugged them both. I'm home, my little fluffs. Their giggles filled the room as I held them close. The long day, the endless dress fittings, Ren's relentless etiquette drills, all of it vanished the moment I saw their faces. And then, a soft presence approached. Seal. She walked toward us with a grace that could silence the world. Her mask was gone, unneeded here, where only love lived. Her deep crimson eyes met mine with quiet affection, and her blue hair shimmered faintly in the lamplight. Welcome home, Master, she whispered. Her voice was gentle, her smile serene. You worked hard today. I nodded, rising to my feet. Too hard, if you ask me. She stepped close, slipping her arms around me in a light, graceful embrace. I leaned into it for a moment, resting my forehead against hers. I missed you, I murmured. Ciel's cheeks turned faintly pink. I never left your side, technically. Still missed you. She didn't respond, only held me tighter. Soon enough, the girls were tugging at our hands. Come on, bedtime. Yes, bedtime, Shinsha declared, dragging both of us toward the bed. The four of us piled in together. I lay on my back, with a daughter curled up on either side, and Ciel resting beside me, her fingers gently entwined with mine beneath the covers. Mummy, I'm glad you're home. I kissed the top of her head. Me too. With that, the lights dimmed, and the room faded into quiet. No ceremonies, no planning, no politics, just peace. Ciel leaned close, whispering the last words I heard that night. Sweet dreams, my love. To be continued.